You should be good, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, you basically say that the position you hold basically to justify abortion, at least in most cases, in the case of like, for example, the first trimester or the zygote case, would be the lack of sentence. So I'm asking you, is it the case that you believe that like a current sentence is a necessary condition for something to be morally valuable, or it is not a necessary condition?
Current, not. I would say none. Since I would
Okay,
still value
so
my patients, right?
okay, of course. So it's going to be a conjunct of past and current sentence, correct?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. So like I have like a pretty easy reductio even to that example.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we have like a secret agency, for example, and they create like a physical clone of your mom, right? So it's a physical clone of your mom, physically identical to your mom, basically. The only difference
Mm-hmm.
is that this physical clone, which is going to be created, is never it has never been conscious, obviously, because it's a new body,
So
and
like a
it is
P
currently
zombie?
not conscious. Yeah, yeah. Well, not a P zombie because it's going to have qualitative experiences. But the whole idea is simply that it is physically identical to your mom, right? And in the next
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes, it will have qualitative experiences like normal human beings. Do you think it is
Mm-hmm.
okay to just like rape that body for no reason, just because you want to?
Well, it's currently conscious when you do that, yeah?
No, no, no. Like it is not conscious currently. So like you have a physical clone of your mom, right?
Uh-huh.
And it is on a bed, okay? Kind of like a dead body, but the exception or the difference is that with the dead body, it's never going to be conscious again. But this body is going to be conscious in the next 10 minutes. So I'm asking you,
Oh,
in that case scenario where you have a
mm-hmm.
physical clone of your mom, which is not currently conscious and has never been conscious, would it be okay for you to just like, stick your meat into that body and just like rape it without his consent?
Oh,
Is
for
that
sure.
okay?
So this is a P zombie that will have consciousness in 10 minutes. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is there a
Do
symmetry
you
breaker
think that's
between that
okay?
and like a zygote besides the time
Well, I was
frame?
asking you. Well, I was asking you. Do you believe it is okay, right? To
Yeah,
just like
probably,
rip them
because
off.
there's no symmetry breaker between that or a zygote. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, our moral intuitions don't converge at this. Obviously, the reason being that, like, for one, we are disgusted by even things such as necrophilia, which is because of the fact that even though this is the case that that thing is not currently conscious, it's still going to be the case that this thing is something which is disgusted or the action is disgusted because there's some social violation.
Sure, I would just go so far as to extend some moral consideration to societal values in that situation, probably. I don't have a super clear position on necrophilia.
Well, that's just one of the reasons, right? Because
Knee
usually
jerk,
when
I would
someone
say
talks about
wrong, but yeah.
that's just one of the reasons, right? Because usually when someone talks about like the moral unjustifiability of these actions, like let's say necrophilic
Mm-hmm.
actions, like if you're engaged in necrophilic sex, for example, they would say
Mm-hmm.
that had this person been alive, they would have not consented to this, right? And usually that's justification. And that would cross over to something like, let's say, for example, a case scenario like what I've given a while ago. So you have a counterfactual account of like maybe harm or something like that, or deprivation of this account insofar as if this person had been alive or if this person had been sentient, they would have not consented to this action, which makes the action immoral.
Yeah, I
So
would
the same
probably
logic crosses over to that case.
I
What's
would
up?
probably um reject that probably. I'm not sure that most people would take that position that if they were alive, they wouldn't have consented. That might be a building variable, for example. I think it's probably just has to do with there's a strong societal appeal to, hey, you probably shouldn't, F dead bodies generally, right?
When you
I'm not
say when you
sure
say
that
someone
most
has
people
past
go for it.
consciousness, real quick, when you say someone has
Mhm.
past consciousness, could you clarify what that specific concept just look like, or what it would look like?
Sure. So are you asking me to like define consciousness or define past?
Or like not define consciousness, but rather what does it look like for a specific body X at time zero to possess past consciousness? What does that look like?
It's gonna probably have to do with brain states, yeah.
So you're saying that the brain that this person has once had access to a particular set of experiences, well, which would be the memories, correct?
Probably, yeah.
So in the case scenario where it's a group of scientists were to basically capture your mom, for example, they take your mom into a van and they do like some sort of experiments on your mom's brain and they just
Sure, yeah.
basically reconfigure your mom's brain states. It would be the case that your mom no longer has past consciousness; will be a new person, correct?
That dives into like theory of personhoods.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah. if you take away all of the beliefs from a person and give them new beliefs and new brain states and memories and et cetera, I'm assuming are entailed in the hypothetical, are they a new person?
And while they're doing that, she's not conscious.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Would
I'm
it be okay
tempted
to just
to
rape that person?
take away their
Hmm.
memories. Probably not, no, for the same reason that it's not okay to kill a comatose person.
Wait, hold on a second. But in that case scenario, that mom that you're talking about there would not have past consciousness nor current consciousness because you're taken away, so she's not conscious currently, and at the same time, while she's not conscious, you're reconfiguring her neural states in such a way where she should not have any access to memories.
I think reconfiguring the neural states at some point in between the scientist capturing her and the reconfiguration, it seems like she would have past conscious experience. She only doesn't have past conscious experience um, once they take those away. And honestly, there's a
Yeah,
view that I could
that's
be
the point. So
sympathetic
at that
to
moment in
in
time, would
terms
it
of
be okay
personhood,
to
where
do it?
she would maintain those experiences.
Yeah, I'm saying that
Um,
at the moment in time, I'm saying at the moment in time where she does not have those memories, right? While it's being
mhm,
configured or reconfigured in such a way where she does not have the same memories or any memories at all, before
mhm,
they basically inject new memories into her doxastic system or her neural system, would it
mhm.
be the case that it is okay to just rape that person?
Yeah, if this person has no past experience or agents, uh, let me answer, and I'm going to qualify. I'm going to say probably, but my objection would not be with the action. My objection would be with taking away these memories in the first place. I think that probably would
We're
be
not
the
talking about
immoral
whether or
thing in
not
that
the action
scenario.
of taking away their memories is okay. We're talking about whether the action of raping that body, which does not have any memories at the point in time when the neural states are being reconfigured, would be okay, right? Given your logic, it would be the case that after you take away the memories, then you
Hmm.
can do anything with the body, even if it's
Yeah,
your actual mom.
maybe. Yeah, I
So
think the objection there. I don't think under my moral system that's okay because you can't take away the experiences or memories or something of an
why is it
agent.
okay? Why is it not okay to take away the memories of someone?
I don't think there's a principled objection there. I guess in the same way that um I think you would probably agree with this too. If you had a memory erase gun, some like Despicable Me shit, for example, right? And you walked
Hmm.
up to a random person and, shot them with it. Is that moral?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Okay. So I agree there.
I think it depends. I
Um,
think it's context sensitive. Like, let's say, for example, the
of
person's
course,
memories
yeah.
are filled with traumatic experiences, and we stipulate into the hypothetical that in the future they'll have this sort of like eudaimonia type experience. They'll have this sort of experience
Hmm.
in which it will be positive negativity based, right? It's going to be based on a lot of good experiences, a lot of like positive valences, right? You could say that given that stipulation, it could be okay under a utilitarian model.
So we're on the same page. Yes. Okay. I think we both have the same position in regard to that. Yeah. So I think we have the same position. That's why. Is I don't think I could articulate a fully fleshed out
Well, what if we
principle.
look? What if you use
I
that
would
same
say no. Yeah.
logic? What if you use that same logic, but for the mom example? Let's say your mom had like
Hmm.
plenty of bad experiences. Like, let's say, hypothetically speaking,
Hmm.
your dad was not with you for a majority of the time, or rather, your dad died before your mom actually gave birth to you, for example. And she went
Hmm.
through a whole lot of tough stuff, for example, just to basically financially support you as a child. And
Yeah.
then
Just
she
a lot
just
of
got
bad
kidnapped.
memories. Hmm.
Yeah, and she has like bad experiences basically every day. She's like majority of her experiences are negative and she
Okay.
gets kidnapped and they basically use like a memory erase gun like you're talking about and they
Hmm.
erase your memories and then as they erase your memories by reconfiguring your brain states at that same time right after that has been done they proceed to rape her and
Hmm.
then inject her with new memories and then make her or put her in a state of consciousness. Would that action be okay given your own moral system?
Yeah. I think it probably would be dependent on the subject that's getting their mind erased. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so in your case, it would have to be okay for your mom to get kidnapped and raped.
I mean, if she wanted to be, yeah. I
It's not a
mean,
matter of what I
yeah,
want to be because, like, Jeffrey
yeah.
Dahmer wanted to, like, basically just, kill people for no reason, but what he wants is irrelevant to the actual moral facts.
No,
So I am like,
not what you want, not what you want. Acting on another agent, what you want in terms of what happens to yourself, right? So, for example,
okay,
if a person
Let's
wanted
say
to,
she's
if a
neutral on
person
that. Let's say
wanted
she
to
has
get
no beliefs regarding
euthanized.
what she wants in herself. Let's say she's neutral on that. Let's say she has no beliefs in what she wants on herself. So it's like just like up to
Mhm.
like let's say a different moral agent to decide what they would believe is suitable to exercise on her body. Would it not be okay?
Oh, like she doesn't give a fuck?
Yeah, she's just neutral. She's just like psychologically neutral to any actions that are being
Yeah, like
exercised on her body.
yeah, like you ask her the question and it's like, yeah, either way. You could either one. I don't really care.
Or rather, if you had asked her the question, she would just not give a shit. Would it not be okay to
Sure,
just rape her body and kidnap her after like
sure.
erasing her memories?
Yeah, if we have the hypothetical where we don't have to like vocalize or verbalize the question to her, where we can just know what her answer would have been 100%.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I think you have bodily autonomy, right? So if you want to get euthanized, if you have a really bad illness, for example, I think you probably should have the right to that. I think there are counterexamples in
You
terms
think
of like
that it
drug
is okay for
users.
people to kill themselves? Do you think that's okay for people to just commit
Yeah,
suicide?
yeah,
Like everyone just get up tomorrow and they just decide, hey guys, let's just like commit suicide
that
because it's
that
our
that
body.
that
Do you
has
think that's okay?
yeah, that has to do with the counterexample I was just talking about in terms of like drug users. There's a lot of counterexamples
Let's say they're
there,
not drug
and
users. Let's say they're in their right mental state, their right state of mind, and everyone just gets up tomorrow and be like, "Hey guys, let's all just kill ourselves," and everyone just agrees on this. Would it not
sure,
be okay for them to commit suicide
I was just touching
and
on
just
like the
completely fine?
general principle. I was just talking like the general principle of like bodily autonomy, and that's a really, really complicated topic.
I think
Should
bodily
people
autonomy faces a whole bunch of paradoxes, but continue and just flesh out the concepts, and then I'll just give my response afterwards.
wait? Sorry, what'd you say? I didn't. You said a word I didn't hear.
Yeah, I'm just saying
A
that
whole
like
bunch of what?
I think there are a bunch of paradoxes given the definition that people use of bodily integrity slash bodily
Caveats.
autonomy. Yeah, and so I'm just gonna wait until we finish fleshing out the concept, and then I'll give my response afterwards. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I would agree. It's incredibly complicated. A lot of caveats. Should people have the right to kill themselves? Um, yeah. I mean, caveats. Barred. Probably. Yeah. Like I think probably people should be able to, if they're very
Then why is it
unhappy
the case
and
that our moral intuitions don't favor that conclusion? Like, well, for one, our moral intuitions diverge from suicide being a morally okay action. We don't think that's okay. So
mine
that's
don't.
just going to be evidence against your position. Excuse me, sorry? You think people think that suicide
Mine
is
don't.
okay and it's fine? You think people like that shit?
Like
I'm
people in
not
general.
talking
Are we
about you.
talking
I'm
like
saying people.
majority?
Yeah,
Do we do it like
yeah,
51
like our
like
moral
50?
intuition.
Yeah, like 51% of the population.
I think it's more than 51%,
Maybe
but yeah,
it could be. It
our
could
moral
be. But when I
intuition
say
vastly goes against that position.
it could be, when I say 51, I'm just talking. Just you're appealing to the majority of society is what I meant to ask
Yeah,
there.
of course. I think moral
Mhm.
intuitions, insofar as what society believes is intuitive, I think or prima facie intuitions are going to be the types of thing which is strong evidence for a moral claim or against a moral claim, for example.
Oh,
Only all
sure,
is
sure,
being
sure, sure,
equal.
sure.
So
I
there can
remember
be
hearing.
real quickly, one more thing.
Yeah.
There can be cases where our prima facie intuitions are incorrect insofar as we have more reliable evidence, like for example, reflective intuitions. We reflect upon the intuitions, and then there are some new layer of intuitions which contradicts our previous intuitions. But until then, I think that prima facie intuitions is pretty good evidence for a moral claim.
It's super funny actually, because just recently I've been dipping my toes, getting back into the scene, and I think I watched your debate actually. I forget who it was with. Fuck, it might have been what's his name? Um, she's trans, I think. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, synth.
Stint. Yeah, I've listened to them a lot. I really like their debates and stuff. Yeah, I think you had this discussion with them. And I remember disagreeing with it then too, just intuitively. It's a new view that I haven't heard articulated or even thought about all that much. Moral intuitions are evidence as to what? Like evidence that something's true morally,
Yeah, like a
like
moral
moral
proposition
facts.
is true. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's yes, it was a moral realism discussion. Yes, and
yeah.
Synth was in the opposition. Okay. I can't remember what he said or even if I agreed with his objection. My intuition as a subjectivist would be that they aren't. I don't think I have a formal argument. I could give you the premises and conclusion as to why they aren't.
I don't even need to ask you for the argument. I'll just prove to you as to why the
Hmm.
moral intuition is not convergent with suicide being okay. It's
Sure.
evidence against your right? So we see
Mhm.
in multiple different interdisciplinary studies or fields, like for example, intuitive physics, mathematics, clinical and social psychology, etc. We see that in these fields, there's a consistent trend of intuitions being accurate, right? It's also more
Mhm.
expected under evolutionary biology that our intuitions, generally speaking, about the world would be accurate, because if majority of our intuitions were to not be accurate, that would not be conducive towards our survival, because our intuitions would have to track the actual relevant harmful facts for it to actually be something which is relevant insofar as helping us towards surviving. So your intuitions, right, given evolutionary biology, even neuroscience, by the way, there's a study in neuroscience that demonstrates that
Mhm.
intuitions has this correlation or this intersection with what is called sensory motor grounding. And so what that is in the brain is just something which is grounded by past experiences. So in other words, for any intuition we have, right, more than likely that intuition or that belief has been proven to be true multiple times in the past, and so that generates this sort of, you could say, impulsive reaction, which is what we consider to be intuitions. So that's what supports intuitions being strong evidence for a given belief, unless we have some sort of defeater, so that those set of intuitions, one could say, right?
Yeah, for sure. It seems like all these we have background beliefs in the same area, though. Yeah, or
Yeah,
like
of course.
background
So
information rather, not beliefs,
So, for
information
example,
rather.
so the idea is for any intuition X, it's evidence for a proposition, all else being equal. So, if me and you are the only persons on Earth and we have different intuitions, then our intuitions would not be sufficient justification. However, if we have more people with the same types of intuitions as my intuitions, then the intuition that I have would be evidence for the position because my position is backed by more intuitions. And for any intuition, is going to be a single individual piece of evidence. So there's more single individual pieces of evidence that favors my position.
Yeah, in all those you listed in terms of evolution, mathematics, physics, it seems like we have some like background information on those fields that could help our intuitions be probability raising. So, for example, if we know the fundamentals of math, like 1 plus 1, the Pythagorean theorem, a squared, b squared, c squared, you have a bunch of like really base foundational knowledge, and you're in some high level like Math 55, for example, and you come across something, and in your brain it itches like, fuck, that's really not correct. That seems really wrong, right? It
What
could
about those
be the case.
foundational knowledge pieces, like about Pythagorean theorem and like 1 plus 1 equals 2? Those would also be
What about them?
justified by mathematical intuitions.
I'm not sure if mathematical intuition rather than a provable thing. Like for example, would you say like
I'm
one
not saying
plus one?
mathematical intuitions is proof. I'm not saying it's mathematical proof. I'm saying it's evidence, right? So proof and evidence are slightly distinct, right? So
Correct.
in
Yes.
proof in mathematics is usually constructive proof insofar as the set of things which are used to construct the proof itself would guarantee the conclusion of the argument or the proof
Yes,
system.
deductive versus
Whereas,
probability raising. Yes.
yeah, of course, I'm just saying it's
Yeah.
evidence, right? I'm saying it's evidence under some probabilistic model.
Sure. Well, what I was saying about those background beliefs is we seem to have background beliefs in any of these given fields that might give us like, hey, maybe that doesn't look right. Maybe that sounds wrong. I can't really identify why, but it seems like it might be the case that it's just some incongruence subconsciously with those base foundational beliefs.
If anything, you're just
Um,
showing that there's a chain of intuitions reliability because for the background beliefs that
that's probably what
furnishes our
intuitions
knowledge
are,
for
yeah?
foreground beliefs. Yeah, I'm saying for the background beliefs, which furnishes our knowledge for foreground beliefs extrapolation, those would be justified by intuitions, given your own system. And then the foreground beliefs.
Everything else, yeah. The concern is, yes, we're on the same page there. I think we hold the same position there. I think the concern is I'm not sure if we have those background beliefs to
In
inform
ethics,
any type of intuition in ethics, yeah,
well, we
or
can use an
background knowledge, I
inductive
should
case.
say rather.
We can say in most cases when we have these types of intuitions, there are background beliefs which furnishes our knowledge which are also justified by intuitions. So most likely, it would be the case that this would also be true of ethics, and maybe in the future with better epistemology, a better, more refined epistemology, and perhaps some sort of technological equipments to better evaluate our belief systems, we would have a stronger grasp or grip of what these background beliefs would look like fully in the field of ethics.
Well, I feel like that boils down to maybe sometime in the future we might figure out whether we do have background knowledge
Well,
to
that's not the
inform these
justification.
intuitions
The
or not.
justification is the inductive case.
Well,
That specifically what you're referencing afterwards is just a sort of utopian type reference to the
sure.
future society.
I guess the objection, or I guess the confusion, if anything, on my part
Okay.
would just be if do we have background beliefs at all? And if we don't have background beliefs in this field, why would that be probability raising?
What do you define background beliefs to be?
So, for example, in like, let's say, intuitive physics, like we have some knowledge on gravity, the mechanics of that, right? It seems probable that we could have intuitions about something, given some background beliefs, and it seems reasonable that if, let's say, this group of scientists or physicists, let's say, have an intuition about something, it seems like that intuition being right more often than not could be explained by those background beliefs. That seems like the most probable explanation in my
But then
mind.
you agree
If
the
you have a
background
different
beliefs
one,
themselves are known through the psychoepistemic tools of intuitions.
what do you mean? Are you just like
Yeah, so how do you
not
justify those
one
background
second.
beliefs?
Not in a not in a bad faith or trying to be like aggressive way, but like are you just like throwing Hume at it? Like the problem of induction and just say how do you know anything? How do you
No,
justify
I
you
don't
knowing
think
those
there is a
background beliefs?
problem with induction. I don't think there's a problem with induction. I reject that problem. I'm just saying
Sure,
that
okay.
yeah, I'm saying as it relates to, like, let's say, for example, the background beliefs, right? Which is going to
Uh-huh.
be the more fundamental beliefs in our epistemology or the axiostic system, right? I'm
Mhm.
saying with respect to those beliefs, how we know those beliefs to be correct, generally speaking, are through intuitions.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would agree with that, but I'm not sure I would disagree with that.
I'll give you one example. So for
Would you
anything in
say
mathematics,
go ahead.
real quickly, I'll give you like one for it. So like in
Mhm.
arithmetic, you'd agree that arithmetic is predicated upon classical logic, right? Like the laws of arithmetic is extrapolated on the basis of the laws of classical logic, and they can prove this by the way.
I think they abide by it probably, yeah.
Well, not
Very
just abide by, they just follow from the laws of classical logic. So mathematics is dependent on logic.
I think everything is, but yes, I agree, yes.
Well,
By and large.
kind of, but I mean, for example, for instance, make extrapolations about the scientific facts just solely on the basis of, facts of classical logic or the axioms of classical logic. But you can do that same thing or that same sort of task with mathematics. But the point I'm making is, like, for example, the law of
Yeah, anyway.
transitivity in mathematics. The
Mhm.
law of transitivity in mathematics, that's provable via the law of identity in classical logic, and that just follows,
Mhm.
right? So the whole idea is, even though background beliefs in mathematics, like for example, beliefs in the law of transitivity, that's justified by another law in classical logic, which is justified by our a priori intuitions. So
Yeah,
fundamentally, all our beliefs are going to be justified by intuitions.
sure. Well, that's a big leap. It might be true, honestly. I don't have a super robust view on this, but that does seem like a little bit of a leap. Are you saying we justify standard logic, like the three standard laws? Do you think that's
I'm
intuition
saying that
based?
for any belief we have on these given matters, they're going to be in most cases intuitive, and so it's going to be evidence for those beliefs or proof of those beliefs being correct.
Do you think we only have intuition and we justify standard logic using intuition, or do you think we use other means?
We use intuitions. So like A equals A, there's nothing more fundamental in logic which could justify A equals A.
Sure. I mean, if you just want to say we can't like conceptualize like a squared circle, for example, like
Yeah,
yeah,
the
of
inability to
course.
conceptualize contradictions is what makes it intuitive to not believe
Hmm.
in dialectism or trivialism or pair-consistent logic or non-classical logic. And so that would be intuitions favoring
I would
classical logic.
sure mm, maybe. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I would say probably, yeah. Um but just
Wait,
like
real
more
quickly,
on
you'd agree,
yeah, go
real
for it.
quickly, just to get this clear before we move on,
Hmm.
you'd agree that how we justify, for example, the law of non-contradiction is based off our inability to conceptualize the contrary, correct?
Um That's a tough one. I'd say there's probably more formal proofs or more formal arguments. How I would feel justified is
You can't
saying
give any sort of
impossibility.
formal,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you can't, yeah,
You
you understand these are
you can't
tautologies, right?
conceptualize of the
So,
opposite. Yeah,
okay, you'd
that's
agree
how
that that's
I
how we
would.
justify these tautologies, right?
For example, if you said, I have a hand, right? And you're seeing your hand in
Okay.
front of you. Is that like intuition or do you have background beliefs?
Yeah,
Like
that's
you
empirical
you have now
intuition. Those sense experiences are going to be something which has
empirical
this sort of,
intuition.
Yeah, we have two different types of intuitions: of empirical and the non-empirical / a priori intuitions, right? So,
Sure.
how
So
Peter
I
van
think.
Weigen would how intuitions would be defined, sorry, by Peter van Weigen is just like this immediate disposition to believe something, given the available data that's being presented to us.
Yeah, so I guess making those distinctions, it seems like the question would transform now that we've clarified this difference between these like background knowledge that you would classify as empirical intuitions and just intuition as just like a gut shot feeling, without any
I
empirical
think those are
intuitions.
basically the same thing, and I think both are evidence for propositions, all else being equal. So under standard conditions, they're
Mhm.
evidence.
Sure. So the question transforms to, if I guess clarified to, I guess since we're just same meaning but different language, I guess is just without empirical intuitions, with no sense data or background beliefs about the outside world or something like that, I'm not sure why just intuitions, non-empirical intuitions, without any other, without anything else, all else held
Well,
equal
because
with
they
a
have a tendency
probability
to be
rating.
accurate.
Do
Because they
they?
have a tendency to be accurate. Yeah, of course. Like
Where? Where do they?
I'll give you one example. I'll do it right now. I'll prove it to you right now.
Hmm.
So, is it intuitive to believe that 1 + 1 = 2? Is that
Yes,
intuitive?
I think you have background beliefs on
Uh,
that. I think you have empirical
what about
intuition.
2 + 2 = 4?
I think you have empirical intuition for that.
You think that it is the case that those things depend on empirical intuitions?
No, I think you have empirical intuitions. I think before
Well,
you
that's
learn
just changing the
mathematics,
subject. We're just talking about like the general accuracy for non-empirical intuition, right? So intuitions which don't depend on empirical constants for us to actually find something,
oh,
right?
so if you put a, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but if you put like 1 + 1 = 2 on a piece of paper and slid it into in front of a person with no prior mathematical knowledge or any or experience, would that be intuitive?
Not mathematical knowledge. I think mathematical knowledge at the fundamental ground is going to be a priori, but just let's say, like the example that Ibn Sina uses, the floating man thought experiment.
Sorry, repeat that.
Do you know like an example which Ibn Sina uses today? Like the floating man thought experiment.
Floating man thought experiment. No.
Yeah. So he's basically just a man who is sensorily deprived, but he has self-awareness and like a priori knowledge, right? So let's say we
Yes.
have a floating man, for example, right? And this floating man was to be presented with the proposition at the conceptual level that 2 + 2 = 4. Do you think he
Hmm.
would believe in the proposition being true or believe in the proposition being false?
Yeah, I sense perception. I would have trouble conceptualizing how you the concept of oneness or
Well,
like
that's
a
just
single thing.
implying that mathematics is inextricably tied to science, which is just a straw man of mathematics.
No, not quite. I'm just saying I can't conceptualize a person with no sense data, like reasoning that 1 + 1 = 2. Like I'm not sure what that means. Like what is
Do you think
one?
mathematical numbers are physical or non-physical?
I think they're probably non-physical, but you need sense perception to reason with them, I think.
I don't think
That would
so.
be my
Non-physical
intuition at
things
the
would
very
not
least.
require. If you agree that they're non-physical, then it would require sense perception to reason with those things because
It
they're non-physical. They
it
can
might
be
be the
observed, right?
it might be the case that I'm not sure what consciousness even looks like without sense data, I guess. I
I
think if
don't
you took
think I don't think consciousness is even dependent on sense data, given like for example Descartes' target sum. But I don't want to derail the conversation into that. I want to just stay on the points regarding
for
the intuition
sure.
stuff. I want to say
Hmm.
that regarding the
I would say
intuition stuff.
maybe
What's
not
up?
in that case. I would say
Yeah.
like
So
maybe
the
not.
idea So the idea is the symbols in mathematics are just things which are used to represent the concepts, but they're not identical to the concepts, right?
I
Kind
think
of like
those
words, for
concepts
example.
represent things in reality, though.
Not necessarily. That's not true. No.
Well, let me clarify a little bit then. So if
I can
you
give you mathematical concepts which are not represented in reality.
no, for sure. I think to understand those concepts, you probably need some sort of concept of measurement. So, for example, in kindergarten, when you're in kindergarten, right? Do you point to a color, or do you like are you like explained what a color is? Do you learn what shapes are by being like the definition of a square is a shape with four 90-degree angles, or
I can
do they
agree that
twist to
in
a square?
kindergarten, the way in which the current society operates is we use that system of knowledge to understand these mathematical concepts, but
I
that doesn't indicate that they
mhm.
require these sorts of knowledge, right? So think
I
of like
think
before
my
kindergarten system
intuition
even existed.
my intuition would probably be you need some type of sense data to understand these concepts initially. So
But
if you
that's just
took
pontification, not
developed
justification, right? Because you're
it,
just pontificating, right?
if you took like a person with developed sense experiences and memories of these concepts, for example, like me or you, and you shut off somehow all of our senses, and we're just brain of that cogito, excuse me, type of situation, I suspect we could. In the inverse, a person with no prior sense experience who had never been conscious, I'm not sure I could make the same claim there.
So I'll just lay out the proposition. So given the
Mhm.
facts that mathematical concepts are non-physical, numbers and all of that stuff are non-physical, why would it be logically necessary for these specific concepts or objects to be graspable by the empirical world, or has to be something which is sensorily observed for us to make inferences on mathematics? Why would that be logically necessarily true given that proposition?
Yeah, it's like asking, is there something logically necessary about brains being physical as opposed to like a dualist system or fully conceptual or non-physical or something along those lines? I'm not sure if it's logically necessary. It just seems to be the case that it is.
Well, that means it's logically. So the idea is it is logically possible for, and it is theoretically possible at the same time for you to have a world in which we have all the same mathematical facts, we have all knowledge of the mathematical facts, and in this world we have zero sense experiences. And because that's logically possible,
Mhm.
then it's not logically necessary for
Yeah,
us to
I'm
have
not sure.
sense experiences
I have a
for these
really
conceptual furniture.
Yeah, I have a really, really strong intuition that this is the case. I don't think there's a logical P and not P I could give you. I have a really that makes me believe there might be
Yeah,
one if
that's
I
evidence for it being
dug
logically
into it a little bit
possible, which would
more.
falsify. Well, that'd be evidence for it being logically possible, which would falsify the proposition that this is required for us to
I think
have
that would be
mathematical knowledge.
under both of our views, even though I disagree at this point with non-intuitive intuitions being probability raising with no other background beliefs. I yeah, I'm hmm, yeah.
The
Yeah,
idea is simply that
I'm not sure if it's I think it would
either
be
way, when it go,
sorry,
either way,
I think it would be
well,
probability sorry, I think it would be probability raising under both of our views that, that it's not logically possible, right? Because I have an intuition about, sense data or something like that.
yeah, but at the same time, you agree that there's no logical contradiction that you could provide. There's no logical contradiction, and there isn't
Yeah,
any
yeah, of
logical contradiction.
course. Yeah,
Yeah, so
I
that
don't think
means
there's any
that
I
it
could
would be logically
provide. I
possible.
suspect there might be.
Do you think it is the case that for most things which we cannot show a logical contradiction in, it is logically possible?
Um,
Most things you've ever thought about, which you have not seen a logical contradiction in
I
conceptually, is that
I
thing
don't
possible?
Sure, I think I've thought about more logically possible things than logically non-possible things just because we deal with those things on a daily
So
basis.
just by that, yeah, so that by
Yeah,
itself
yeah,
would be
yeah.
evidence for it being logically possible.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I would say that is a piece of evidence. I would also say my very strong intuition would probably be evidence against it being logically possible as well. But that's assuming I have some sort of like background or what's
The
the
problem
phrase
is
you
your
use?
intuition gets
Empirical
undercut by my
intuition.
intuitions. Your intuitions gets undercut
Mhm.
by my intuitions. Plus, I have independent evidence outside of just my mere intuitions, which, given your own epistemology, would favor my position. So there's more evidence favoring my position. Your
For sure.
position relies on
What
just your intuitions. Wait, real
Mhm.
quickly, your position relies on just your intuitions. My position relies not just based on my intuitions, but also the independent inductive evidence of things which you cannot personally find a logical contradiction in to be logically possible.
what's the things outside of your inductions?
No, I'm saying there's something outside my intuitions.
Sorry, intuitions. Yes, you said I have my
The
intuitions
the
about this. You
we
have your
agreed on,
intuitions
because
about
you
this.
agreeing specifically that the majority of the times when something is not logically impossible, there's an inability for to find a logical contradiction in that concept, even given your own background experience.
Gotcha.
Right.
I would go so far. I think I would feel pretty confident in making the claim that the majority, let's say, if we want to say 51% of the time, that you feel like something is logically contradictory, you feel like something is logically impossible. I think it might be the case, at least for me at the very least, that it is logically impossible. I would feel
So
reasonably
the
confident in making that claim.
Yeah, but we can use a distinction. We can use like a distinction mark. We can say in those cases, usually amongst those cases, there is in fact a logical contradiction, which I can demonstrate, which would not cross over to this case. So we have a justified exception to that inductive case, which should then be justified by another piece of inductive pool, which would favor my position.
Yeah,
So that argument would work.
one second.
What's up?
Sorry about that. My brother's knocking on the door. No, I would go so far as to say, that no, the majority of the times that I feel like there's a logical contradiction or that there is a problem, the majority or more often than not there is one, right? I would agree with you
But
that the
is it the
majority.
case that most of those times there is in fact a logical contradiction?
Yes, I would say yes.
Okay, but in this case, there's no logical contradiction.
That I don't know if there is one or not.
Exactly. Right?
Correct. I have a strong intuition that there is, but I haven't. This is a lot of this information is something I haven't rigorously
Okay,
discussed.
so the idea is
So I would have to sit down and think about it
there's
more and
no
dig out some
construction of a
nuance.
contradiction. And it is the case that in most cases, for your own agreement prior, in which you're not aware or you're not able to formulate a contradiction in a given concept, it is logically possible.
Yeah, assuming I don't have other confounding variables. Yeah, but that's not the case.
Which you don't in this case. So that means it is the case here because you said that there are no means by which you could show the contradiction for this concept.
No, that's not what I meant. So when I said confounding variables, I meant like background beliefs. So if I don't have any other intuitions about it, yes, if I can't find a logical contradiction in something, all else held equal, maybe, yeah, but I do have
Well,
a
whether or
strong
not all is
intuition that
being
this is
held equal,
logically
you agree that
possible.
there is no logical contradiction that you could have basically find
That I
in
can
the idea of there being
currently
mathematical
identify.
knowledge independent of empirical facts.
That I can currently identify. I cannot
Yes.
currently explicit a P and not P with the idea of dealing with non-physical concepts without any sense datum. Correct. Yes, I have a strong intuition
Yeah,
that
and
there is
so
a problem.
that would
I
be
can't
evidence for it not being contradictory, despite your intuitions in
wait. What the
favor of
fuck
it
am I
being
saying?
contradictory.
No, I would say because I have the intuition that it is impossible or it's logically impossible. That would also be a strong point of evidence that it is. Right. I
Wait, so
wouldn't
now you're
say.
agreeing that intuitions is strong evidence for some case.
Yeah, with if you have an intuitive or rather empirical intuitions in the background, if you have background knowledge or beliefs, I
And
think
why do you think
intuitions
moral
probably are.
intuitions do not have empirical intuitions in the background? What determines whether or not something has empirical intuitions? What determines whether or not something has empirical intuitions in the background?
Well,
What determines that?
I hope we're not talking past each other. When I tried to nail it down earlier, I asked, I gave like the hand example, and I said, "Hey, if I have my hand, I'm looking in front of me, and I say, I have a hand," and you said that would classify as an intuition under your view. You just said it's different in that that's an empirical intuition. So I said,
Yeah, but
okay,
I'm asking you currently because I'm investigating your
I
epistemology.
know,
You're saying that
yep, I know.
intuitions we have would be justified if we have some background belief, which
I
is
was just
justified by
clarifying.
empirical intuition.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
was just clarifying that we're talking about there. To answer to your question is,
okay, so what I'm asking you here is simply, what would determine something having these sort of background beliefs slash empirical intuitions to justify those latter set of intuitions?
there's probably a more robust answer. My guess would be probably like some sense experience, right?
So you don't think it is the case that, or you think it is the case that it's incompatible with ethical intuitions? So when you
Sorry,
make like a
repeat
moral
that
judgment,
question.
for example, are you saying
Mhm.
it's completely independent of empirical intuitions?
Um, no, I think empirical
Like no
intuition.
sense experiences comes into play in the
Oh,
formulation of our moral
No,
beliefs. Is that your claim?
Um, so to fall down the slope, really, I want to clarify really quickly. I think you're going to have some things you consider or care about or have moral beliefs about. Like, for example, like I think it's wrong to kill someone, right? For example, I'm not
But I'm
sure.
asking you, are those beliefs or
Yeah. I was
intuitions
getting that.
completely independent of like empirical intuitions?
Yeah, I'm not sure any empirical intuitions would impact my moral beliefs.
So you think it is the case that, yeah, that's just ridiculous, and this is just not even true, because we see
Really?
multiple
Okay.
times for non-vegans when they watch videos of cows getting like factory farmed, their
Hmm.
intuitions change. So that would
Sure.
mean that intuitions or moral intuitions are impacted by sense experiences, even given your own system. So you'd have to then say that yes, moral intuitions would be good evidence, just like mathematical intuitions and those
Do
other
we
types of intuitions.
go for yeah. So we're talking when we're moral intuitions there, we're talking about like our moral beliefs in terms of I care about or I guess maybe just to ensure we aren't equivocating and there's some ground being made here. By morals, we're referring to like I know you're a moral realist, but when I'm talking about moral beliefs, I'm talking about like preferences, right?
Talk about preferences. Dispositions to believe something is not identical to preferences, right? So you could say
Correct. Yes.
that, yeah.
No,
So for
I agree
example,
with you.
yeah. So like empathy is something which you have to place into consideration, right? So I can prefer to, let's say, bully someone, and then let's say I love using this example. So like let's say in the future
Hmm.
there's this brain computer interface technology, right? And
Hmm.
so what happens is what this basically allows me to do is basically switch experiences with victims, right? And so even if at the time when I was not the victim, I prefer to do this thing like bullying the person, when I
Hmm.
switch the experiences between me and that person, after gaining first-hand epistemic access to those experiences, I no
Hmm.
longer prefer to do that action. And so it points out a distinction between mere preferences and moral intuitions.
I think you could replace the preferences with the word or like do some or I think it's to do this, and I like there would be the meaning
I
would
think that would
be
be a
changed.
flawed semantics because of there are plenty of reductios, there are plenty of semantic reductios to that approach, right? If you're just going to use
Sure.
these two terminologies interchangeably.
Sure. I mean, that's what I currently do now. Like when I say I think I'm gonna kill people, my preference you ought not kill people, right? Um,
Oh,
is
really?
there?
So that means
Yeah.
so let's say hypothetically speaking, right? Let's say
Hmm.
a you're to meet a magician, right? And he was to just
Hmm.
snap his fingers and your preferences change to just raping kids in your basement. Would it be the case that it is now true to assert that raping kids in my basement is okay, given the fact your
According,
preferences changed?
I don't want to fall into the I'm surprised, or I guess I'm not surprised. Tonlock. I don't want to fall into the Tonlock thing where it's like, is it now okay? And that seems to be really pumping the like intuition, pumping the idea of some type of like objective morality. Is it now okay? From my perspective, if my moral change, if my preferences changed, which in my view is
Doesn't have to be
tautologically,
right now. It could be in the next. It could be the next 10 minutes, right? So I get a magician to meet you, right? And he snaps his fingers, and then
mhm.
when 10 minutes time limit pass, you now have the preferences, or you then have the preferences to rape kids. Would it then be okay?
are what you're communicating to me there and how I take that is if they changed your preferences to something else, would your preferences have changed? Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course it's like
So the answer is then
trivially
it
true.
would be okay. So the answer is when your preferences change, it would be the case that yes, this action would not be okay. This action being raping kids in your basement. That's your position.
Yeah, yeah, but that's trivially true, right? That's like with any subjectivist position. I mean, by and large,
No,
you
it
don't
doesn't,
want to use
because a
preference.
subjectivist position is no, it doesn't,
Sure.
because a subjectivist is not just merely they're not defining morality as preferences. They're saying it
Yeah.
is identical to preferences.
If
So,
you
for
if you want
example,
if
you're
you if you
there,
want to
real
use a
quickly, real
utilitarian
quickly, real
argument, yeah, I
quickly,
agree with you.
real quickly. I was just
Yeah,
gonna
go for it.
say there's a distinction between metaphysical theses or metaphysical propositions and theses about semantics, right? So if I say something is true by definition, that's just gonna be saying A equals A, like a bachelor is an unmarried man. However,
Yeah.
if I say that this bachelor weighs over 150 kilograms, that's different, right? That's going to
Of
be
course.
something which is a synthetically true proposition. So the subjectivist, they're not just merely defining
Mhm.
ethics as just preferences, They're saying that what is the case about
It
ethics is
reduces
that they're
down.
identical to preference. Yes.
Yeah,
So that's
I think
different.
it's reduced down to.
So it's not trivially true. You
Like,
can't say it's trivially. The only way it is trivially true is if it is true by definition. But you just agreed it is not true by definition. So it is false even to assert that it is trivially true.
really quickly, I might have misspoke. What did I say that agreed that it's not trivially true?
You said it is trivially true. That
Yeah,
this
I
would be
think
the
it is.
case. That it is okay.
Yeah, and you just
I'm
said that
saying that that's
it's
not the
not.
case. Right?
Yeah, and you said I said something that agreed
No,
that
I'm
it's
saying that.
not
Yeah,
trivially
I'm
true.
saying your agreements. Yeah, I'm saying your agreements that moral subjectivism is not merely making this is not merely making this semantic thesis. They're not making that some sort of
Oh
claim.
no,
They're making
I
a
think it
metaphysical
is.
proposition.
No, I think it is.
Yeah, you're saying
I think it
subjectivism.
is.
Real quickly.
Well,
So you're telling
yeah,
me
well, it's
that a
both, I guess.
subjectivist. Hold on. You're telling me that a subjectivist, they're just defining that which is moral is that which they prefer.
Not quite. I think it's both. It's both in the meta-ethical view and both in how I use language. So the meta-ethical view is, yeah, I know
I'm
it's
just talking about
probably boiled.
subjectivists generally, right? I'm just talking about subjectivists generally because even if you want to say that the way in which you perpetually use language it points towards this position, I can use the
A lot
same
of
logic
people
for
use it
like
that way.
atheistic debates, for example. I don't think so, and I can even prove that afterwards. But I can use the same logic for theistic debates. Like, okay, I define God to be a rock, and rock exists, so God exists, and there it goes,
Yeah,
trivially true that
that's not
God exists, and
it's not
so.
communicating any correct.
Exactly. So let's just get this back on track, right? So in your case scenario, you believe that this is just how it is generally defined amongst subjectivists. So I'm going to ask you this question: Do you believe that
Seems to
when
be
a
the case.
subjectivist and a do you believe when a subjectivist and an objectivist are arguing about
Hmm.
whether or not morality is subjective or objective, they're going
Uh-huh.
under the same definition?
No, I think actually a lot of the time they're talking past each other. Like even in the Tanlock. That's why I think you listened to at least a little bit of our Tanlock discussion when I was arguing with him and the other person that was in there. We were talking past each other
So
because
you think they're just
I
talking
would
past each other?
a lot of the time, unless the other person has some sort of like decent philosophical background knowledge about the topic, then I think you could engage a little bit more fruitfully. I think a lot of the time you're talking past each other, yeah. But
Okay.
what I
So
wanted
I
to
want to
say
get clear on
earlier,
a couple of things.
what I
So I want
really
to
quick,
get clear on a
what I
couple of
wanted to
things.
say
So
earlier before you say that,
okay.
it's both the meta-ethical view that I think moral probably do boil down to preferences. That's why
Okay.
when I use the word moral, I use the word preference because I think that's what they boil
So
down to
I have another question.
meta-ethically. But that's
So
why I
you
use the
think that
language.
so you think in most cases, in most meta-ethical conversations, there are no debates going on, correct?
Sure, it could be the minority.
Well, your
I would say
position commits you to saying
probably.
that the vast majority of meta-ethical conversations between objectivists and subjectivists are not actually debates because they're
No,
talking past each
I
other.
have no dog in that fight. I don't care if it's the minority. That's just how I use it.
Hold on a second.
It could be
So
the
real
minority.
quickly, well, you'd have to care, right? Because you just said that the God existence example, it would not be a meaningful communication for me to define God as a rock. So you'd have to care about it, even given your own linguistic analysis of how we
But you
determine
wouldn't
the
agree with
utility of
that?
the word usage.
You
I'm
wouldn't
saying
agree
that
with
you'd have to care. I'm saying you'd have to care about your definition being just an individualized proprietary definition, given the fact you cared about the analogy I've given about the God's existence
Oh,
case
yeah,
scenario.
yeah, yeah. I guess the care there or consideration I would take to address me caring about would just be just to communicate what my beliefs actually are at the beginning of the debate. Which I
Okay.
think I always do.
So
So I
real
mean,
quickly,
yeah.
so are you making the claim? So real quickly, are you making the claim that that which is moral, is that which is identical to preferences fully, right? Like that means they're the same thing by definition, right?
That's my I would say that's my view,
By
yeah.
your definition. By your
Yeah, yeah,
definition.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it logically impossible for you to have preferences which are non-moral?
Um yeah, I
Is it like
would just
not?
say
Is
it's a
it
different
logically or
preference though.
scientifically impossible for WhatareDoge to have preferences to which are
Yeah, I would
non-moral? Given your what's
I would
up?
probably just say it's preferences about different things, right? So I would agree with you,
Wait, but
right?
is it a
That's
yes or a no to
obviously.
the question? Is it like is it
Oh,
logically impossible or is it logically
I
possible?
I'm gonna answer, and then I'm gonna explain a little bit. As I understand what the point of this is. So the answer is yes, and the explanation is yeah. Of course, I think that's probably just gonna be something
Yes,
like
it's
something
logically
different.
impossible.
No. It's logically possible, and the explanation
Okay,
with that is we can have preferences for, let's say,
well
a
that's a
rock, for
contradiction, right?
example.
Well,
Yeah, for a rock. Uh,
well that's the example. That's the contradiction, right? That I basically made you fall into
I
debate, right? Because
I
then,
guess the
if it is logically
clarification would be a
possible,
different type of preference. I guess it's like a preference, a moral issue. Yes.
well, even if it is a different
Yeah.
type of preference, the point of the matter is when you're talking about something being, when you're talking about the preferences being identical to the moral facts, you're indexing it to one frame of reference, which is the thing which is being assessed, and you're agreeing
What
that it is
preference?
logically possible. Yes, the preference and the thing which is being morally assessed. Do you agree that it is logically
I guess in
possible
the
for it to have a non-moral
way I
preference?
use language, I'm rejecting a single thing. Then
No. I'm saying you're talking about something being wrong, like for example, raping a kid being wrong. Given that
hmm
specific assessment, I'm telling you here that you agree that it is possible for it to have that preference and it is not moral. Now, even if you want to say that that non-moral thing or the reason as to why this non-moral is as a result of a different preference, that's irrelevant. Because then, if it is relevant, if it is as a result of a different preference, then that preference would not be something relevant to morality.
sure, I'm not saying it's the result of a different preference. I think I would just semantically make a distinction between preferences that have to do with like ethical things, non, right? That seems like that would work
Well, that's not going to
semantically.
be addressing the point. That's just kicking the can down the road because the point you're
What's the
talking about
contradiction
here.
then?
Well, the contradiction is if you're going to say that that which is moral is that which I prefer, but you agree that there's logical possibilities of something which you prefer, which is not moral, then that means it is
hmm
not the case that this is true by definition, but this is a mere metaphysical proposition.
Yeah, just because you can have a preference about something else, I'm not sure why that would pose a logical problem.
It's not a
Because
preference about something
also
else. It's not a well, even if it is a preference
non-ethical
about
thing,
something else,
non-ethical thing.
you
Yes.
hold on, you agree. Oh, wait, yeah, exactly. So if that non-ethical preference makes it the case that this thing is non-moral, despite it being something which you prefer, which you take to be identical to morality, that would still be a contradiction.
Yeah, maybe I
Non-ethical
maybe I
preferences.
haven't explained this fully, or maybe it's a
I don't think it's an
one of us is
explanatory issue,
exaggerating,
but I
I
want to
think.
say one thing before you give your points. Sorry about this. I want to
Yeah, go
say
for it.
that non-ethical preferences, given your own system of moral epistemology, could not play a role in determining the truth values of moral propositions which you take to be identical to preferences, because they have
Yeah.
no relevancy, no truth conditions relevancy to moral propositions assessment.
Yeah. I think I've explained as best as I can. I'm gonna type this out and see if that helps a little bit.
Sure.
Let's see. Moral preference. So you like obviously it's trivial. Like preferences could be about different things or different fields or different groups, right? You agree with that, right, Apollo?
Okay. Are you typing it down or something?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Just asking you a question. Like, I
Oh,
assume
what
you
was
would
the
agree.
question?
Preferences could be about different fields or something like that, right? Or groups of study,
Not in the
or
context of what I'm talking about. In the context of what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about you having preferences which are not moral. So, like for example, you prefer to do this action, right? And that preference is something which motivates you to believe in the action to be moral, but that preference is not something which is a moral preference. That means it's a non-moral preference. I'm saying in that particular case scenario, there would be a contradiction.
so is the contradiction that let's see, what's the P and not P there? I guess
Okay, so you'd agree that preferences you take to be identical to that which is moral are the types of things which are about moral assessment?
Not exclusively. No. Okay, I think that was the misunderstanding or lack of
So
communication,
you think
even
it is the
being
case that
charitable.
preferences about that which is preferences about that which determines that which is moral is not exclusively about that which is moral.
No, you could have preferences about a whole host of things. You could have a preference on what type
Okay,
of chip you like, right?
So
you could also have
gastronomic preferences.
you could also have a preference about, you know, what you should and shouldn't do.
So real quickly, gastronomic preferences, right? Is it the case that gastronomic preferences? Is it the
Mhm.
case that those preferences collapse into the domain of moral preferences?
Explain what you mean by gastronomic.
Gastronomic preferences are preferences about flavors, like what tastes good, for example.
Sure, and the question is that going to fall into a non-moral preference
Is
or a
it
moral preference?
is it in the set of moral preferences? So let's look at the set of all of what are Doge moral preferences.
Mhm.
Doge's moral preferences. In
Yeah.
that set, are gastronomic preferences in that set of moral preferences?
Yeah, I think everyone should be morally obligated to have mint chocolate chip be their favorite flavor ice cream. Yes, I do position.
You think people are morally obligated to have that preference?
No, I'm kidding with you. No. Um,
Okay,
no, no, of course not.
just had to check.
Unless the preference is like, you know, you ought to eat this type of ice cream. No, it's probably just I like that thing. It's probably the non-moral sort of fall to.
So, yes or no, are gastronomic preferences in the set of all moral preferences that you uphold currently? Is that something which is in that
No.
set or no?
Uh,
Okay, cool. So that
largely.
means
Wait one
more.
second. There's a
What's up?
qualifier. So there could be
Okay.
preferences about that same type of topic. So like other people ought to eat this type of ice cream. That would be a moral preference.
It doesn't
Whether
even
like
have to be deontic ought. It could be just permissibility claims. So this is permissible. It is okay.
it's okay to eat this type of ice cream. Yeah, that would be that would fall into a moral preference. Yes,
And so, do you think the gastronomic preferences is doing the work there when you're talking about something being okay, or do you think it's the moral preferences?
it's the moral preference that's because
Okay, so that
the
means the
deontic ones
gastronomic
don't have any
preferences.
reference.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
the
case closed, point
gastronomic don't
proven,
have
right?
any
So that means
reference.
the
Yeah.
gastronomic preferences will not play a role in moral decision making theory, right?
Um.
Yeah, that's just a
Largely,
concession you
yeah.
just made because you
Did
agree
I hold
that
that
they don't
position?
play a role in. Yeah, you just said that they don't play a role in the determination of the permissibility of the action. So that means they don't play a role in that means they don't play a role in moral decision making theory in our
Did I
given
hold
real
the
life scenarios.
Well, I think there's a little confusion on my end because I think something you said earlier was really, really similar to that you held the position to. I'm not sure that I ever held the belief or position that they do, though. Did I? Did I say somewhere that
You said that
or
you
is it
denied the proposition that moral preferences would be the types of preferences which are exclusively related to the determination of moral facts.
oh, that was your understanding of my semantic. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, yeah, I think that was just an issue in communication or understanding. Yeah, no, I do not hold that position. Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
I think
so moral
preferences can be
preferences, under
distinct
your own assessment, would be the types of preferences
that
which
have to do with moral
determines the
things. Yeah.
moral facts, correct?
Determine is a scary word because I am a subjectivist, but yeah, informs, I guess, would be a safer word. But yeah, no, I think yes, I would agree with that for sure.
Well, it has to be determined also because you take them to be identical.
Sure, by determined, a lot of the time when I've like listened to these types of discussions in the past, determines can really uh spiral out into some type of like objective determinism. Like this is the case universally, and that's not what I'm saying. Well, I know you're not saying
Well,
that.
the
I just
idea
wanted
is
to
simple.
clarify
Well, you'd
language.
have to because you're saying this is true by definition. So this is the claims you're making, right? So you're saying all of my preferences are moral, and that's just something which is trivially true given the fact that that which is moral is that which you prefer. Now that
Yeah, yeah,
means if something is moral, you prefer this. And so,
correct.
given that
It is my
specifically,
preference for that.
for
Yeah,
anything which you do not prefer, it to not be moral. That would be the contrapositive, right? That's
correct.
going to be the
Yeah,
same truth for this.
that is my position. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, is it possible for there to be something which you do not prefer, which is in fact morally permissible? Is that possible?
If I have a moral preference, is
No,
it
no. Is it
possible?
logically possible for there? Is it logically possible for there to be something which you do not prefer, which is morally permissible, which is morally okay? Is that
Are
possible?
are Okay, so we're not being
Just a
reductive.
yes or
Okay,
no. It's not like a trick question, just like a yes or no question. Is it
no, for sure.
logically possible?
Is it logically
Yeah.
possible for me to have a moral preference about something and that
Not for
moral
you to have a moral
preference?
preference, for you to not morally prefer something, or for it to not have
Mhm.
a preference, any sort of preference whatsoever towards something, and that given thing, whether it's an action or whatever, is something which is morally permissible. Is that possible?
Oh, so it's just like if I don't. Well, no, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I would ever
Is
have
that
a
possible?
neutral position. Um, no, I'm almost confused on what you mean by if I didn't have a
So if you were to be
preference.
put in a coma, for example, if you were to become a
Mhm.
comatose patient and you have no preferences at that moment in time when you're in a coma,
Mhm.
would there still be things about the world which are morally permissible?
Um, yeah, that's really weird because um yeah, if you like really like apple pie and you fell into a coma, would you still really like apple pie?
Okay, I'll just rephrase it like this. I'll rephrase it like this.
Because to
You're a
me that was
comatose patient,
analogous.
right? Well, hold on. So let's say you're a comatose patient, right? And so it is the case that you have no preferences. That's going to be stipulated.
Mhm.
Would it be true to assert while Doge the person is in the coma that it is wrong to rape kids? Would that be false
Yeah, through
when you're
some
in a
like
coma?
magical hypothetical way. Um, yeah, so I that's the same. I mean, you added a little bit more
Wait. I'm
detail
just
to the
asking you. Would it be
hypothetical.
false? Yes or no? Like if you get knocked out right now, you're in a coma. Would it be false for people to basically morally condemn or morally disallow rape and slavery? Would that be false?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. So that's you. It was the same hypothetical that you asked before. You just added a little bit more detail. And my question was, I'm not entirely sure. That seems a little bit in a iffy gray area. If someone,
Are you
if you, for
entirely
example,
sure that the
well,
moral preferences are identical? Or sorry, are you entirely sure that the moral facts are identical to your preferences?
yeah. So if you, for example, really like apple pie, and then you got put into a coma, do you still really like apple pie? Do you have an
Well, remember,
opinion
you
about
agree
apple
this is
pie?
analogous because that's a
No,
gastronomic
that's
preference, and we agree gastronomic preference has no relevance to moral decision making theory. So that's
one
not going to
second.
work. We have to talk about
I
something
don't
regarding
one
moral
second.
assessment.
I don't
What's up?
think I don't think that makes it disanalogous because the principle is the same. It's about a preference. Do your preferences hold even though you're not currently conscious? Right? That's
No, I'm
the
not
driving
asking if your
principle that needs
preferences
to be.
hold. I'm asking. No, I'm not asking if the preferences hold. I'm asking what the facts, which could be identical to the preferences, hold.
Yeah, that what are the facts?
So facts about whether or not it is okay to rape kids. So like, let's say again, I'm gonna
That's
just put it like
why
this.
go ahead.
Just
Yeah.
really quickly, right? Just really quickly,
Mhm.
right? So once again, you're in a coma. That means you have no preferences currently. You're not conscious at a given moment in time. Now while Doge is in the coma for 8 months, right? When people go on the road, for instance, and they shout out something like "We should not rape kids," are they correct when they're making that claim? Yes or no?
I was thinking about it a little more when you talked. I would lean toward yes, just insofar as I would say if someone had a preference that they told someone or somehow let someone else know before they were comatose, I think it's probably good to respect that preference even though they're comatose. Um
So wait a
that's my
second,
only
hold on.
thought on that.
So let's say instead of people making that claim, we
But that's
have
not
so let's say so let's stipulate that we were to go into like I don't know like or let's say you're to be in like a time freeze like Captain America for example, and
sure,
you
yeah.
wake up in like 2099 or something, or let's say you don't wake up in 2099, but in
Uh-huh.
2099 there's complete human extinction, and so the only entities which exist on planet Earth are just mere AIs. When they report the judgment, given some sort of algorithmic sequences, that it is not okay to rape children, would they be wrong about that statement or would they be correct?
Um I think an analogous to that would just be if someone I'm assuming these are
Well, I'm
AIs
just
or
asking just
agents
like a
in this
yes or no, right? Would they
hypothetical.
be wrong or would they be correct?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna say a sentence and then I will say yes or no. I'm assuming in this hypothetical these AIs are agents,
I would
and
want you to start off with a yes or no, then clarify afterwards. Clarify.
okay, yeah, no, and then the clarification is, if another agent has a
Okay.
different preference than me, that's okay. It's just true from their view. It's just they have a
Let's
preference
say
for
there are
something
no
that I don't
agents
have a
but you
preference
who is
for.
currently in the time freeze, right? You're in a time freeze machine.
Hmm.
Now, you just said a while ago that the robots, the AIs, they would be incorrect when they're making the statement that it is
According,
not
yes.
okay to rape children.
Yeah, from my view, they would be incorrect.
Okay, so for your view, they would be incorrect, correct?
I just thought about it. I don't want to use incorrect in type of like there's a logical problem, but yeah, I would use the language that yeah, they're incorrect. Yeah.
Well, even then, right, as it pertains to what we were talking about previously, right,
Hmm.
about the moral decision making stuff, there was an issue with your position because you agreed previously that it is in fact possible for you to for you to have a moral preference or a sort of
Hmm.
preference which is non-moral.
Correct. Why is that a problem in my position? That's just the distinction
Because
between
the
preferences
thing which
about
you
moral
appeal
or
to
non-moral things.
because the thing which you appeal to which would be something which makes it non-moral is something which you agree has no relevancy in determining the moral facts. So it
Oh,
would not be the
that's
case that
false.
that would count in favor of something being non-moral. So
That's
what that
false.
would entail is simply, real quickly
Mhm.
before you respond, what that would entail is simply that you'd have a preference which, under your position, is necessarily moral, but it is not the case that it is necessarily moral because it is non-moral given the agreement you've made in that specific hypothetical.
Yeah, that's false. Really quickly, I never said you can appeal to something that has nothing to do with these moral things, and that somehow informs it. That's what led us to making the distinction and me clarifying. Yeah, you can probably have preferences about a whole host of things, right? So you can have preferences about moral facts, or I guess I don't want to use facts like moral things, or you can have preferences about, what time of day is the best to go to the beach, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not entirely sure what the objection there is outside of that. I think the question I was asking really quickly was if you have a preference, um, and you're in a coma,
I'm asking
is
you, is
that
it
preference
possible for there to
true?
be a non-moral preference?
You can, yes, we discussed this
Okay, so I'm going
10
to ask
minutes
you
ago,
this
you
other
know.
question. I'm going to ask you this other question. Let's say you have a coherent, like how coherentism works, right? Like a web of beliefs, and they're all
Vaguely,
consistent, right? They're
yeah,
okay.
super vaguely.
So let's say you have a set of a web of moral beliefs, right, or a web of moral intuitions or preferences, right?
Hmm.
And give me one sec, hold up. Yeah, let's say you have a web of moral beliefs or moral preferences, right?
Hmm.
And in this web of moral preferences, right? Um, Is it possible for there to be a moral preference which is not in fact something which points towards the moral facts?
By points toward, what do you mean?
Like they report an accurate judgment about what is in fact moral slash immoral.
Maybe? Probably. I'm not sure. Let me think about that. Could you have a belief downstream of another belief
Let's
or
say you
preference
only have
that
three. Let's
leads
say you
to
only
that
have
or supports
three.
it?
Yeah, so let's say you only have like let's say three
Hmm.
preferences, right? Three moral preferences. Is
Yeah.
it possible for any of those moral preferences to be something which are not in fact a moral fact? It's not in fact a morally accurate judgment about the world.
Can you explain the relevance between the AI hypothetical and this really quickly? I'm missing the
Well,
link.
they're not connected, right? This is a separate hypothetical because I'm adapting to your viewpoints, right? So I'm saying, would that be possible? Yes or no? In the case that I've just given, is it possible for there to be a moral preference you have which is not in conformity with the moral facts?
Um, I'm not sure. I would. Hmm, I want to say maybe because I there's a conceivable world. I don't think that um
Like you
the
agree, it's
physical
perhaps
facts.
possible. Like it's probably possible, right?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe what I if I were to agree to this, my meaning would be maybe you could have a moral preference about something, and then like I think you posed the vegan example earlier, which I agreed with, I think, where like a vegan or I guess a non-vegan could see like a slaughterhouse documentary. My mom actually did this for a couple of years, a few years ago. It was terrible. Watch like a slaughterhouse documentary and maybe change their opinions on something, right? My answer is maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's the case their preference changed,
Well,
or if they had
even
an underlying,
possibly,
or if they had an
even
underlying
possibly
preference to
possible
not
until
harm
it's been
humans.
possible. Well, even possibly until it's been possible,
Yeah,
right? So that's the work
possibly,
I feel.
possibly, possibly, possibly. Could physical, non-moral things influence your preferences as for moral things? Um, Possibly. Yeah, I don't have a definitive answer to say no, it definitely couldn't, if that's the answer you're
Yeah,
looking
but the
for.
thing is, if it is possibly possible, then it is possible, and so it to not be trivially true that the moral facts are identical to your preferences or anyone's
I'm not
preference.
sure I agree with that.
Well,
I'm
it
not
just
sure I agree
follows.
with
It just
that.
that's just a something. That's just like an entailment of modal logic, right? So if something is possibly possible, then that means it is possible, and if something is possible, then that means its negation is not necessary. And so the
Sure.
negation to this possibility is
I
that the
feel like we're
moral
jumping
preferences
modalities
would be
there,
identical to the
but yes,
moral
I would agree with
facts.
that. I felt like we were
I mean,
jumping.
everything follows.
Initially, I
That
felt
these
like we
are
were
just
jumping
facts of
modalities, but
logic,
yes, I
right?
agree.
You'd have to be illogical to reject logic,
Yeah,
right? So
it sounded like we were jumping modalities. I don't think we are anymore. I would say if we can't confirm something isn't possible, that doesn't mean that it is possible, right? So, for example, if we can't
but
come
you're
up,
saying that it is maybe possible. So that's you agreeing that it is possibly possible.
no, there's a distinction. There's a core distinction there between not being able to provide. Like, let's use an example from this discussion actually earlier. I was talking about I have a strong feeling that there is a lot of contradiction. It feels really wrong to identify one. The fact that I couldn't identify a logical contradiction doesn't mean that there isn't one, right? That's the distinction there.
Okay, but the thing is, I was saying that the point I was making
So that's
previously,
incorrect.
would you agree it's epistemically possible?
What do you mean by like
Like it's
epistemically
compatible with your
possible?
given
Meaning
knowledge? Like it's compatible with your knowledge and what you know
that
currently that it is the case that
that
this thing is in
that
fact possible?
that's going to be fluid, but within my current knowledge, I can't rule that out. No, yeah. So
Okay,
epistemically, with
cool.
my
So
knowledge,
if
yes,
it is
it's
epistemically
epistemically
possible,
possible.
well, that's going to be sufficient anyways, because anything which is actually something which is true by definition or epistemically necessary. But if you're agreeing it's epistemically possible for this thing to be false, then it's
Hmm.
not going to be the case that it's epistemically necessary. And so it cannot be true by definition. And so it's not trivially
If
true
something if
that the
something
moral
isn't
facts
one
are
second,
identical to the moral preferences.
if something isn't epistemically necessary, it's not true.
No, if something isn't epistemically necessary, it is not true with respect to analytic facts. So if I'm
For
saying
sure,
something is true by
by epi.
definition, it has to be the case that
Okay.
it is epistemically necessary, but you agree that it is not epistemically necessary by agreeing it's epistemically possibly false.
I think the language would be better. The language would be better if we use semantically instead of epistemically here, because I would actually have a different position. If you said if it's semantically necessary to use preferences to talk about morals or morals to
Mhm.
refer to preferences, yeah, I would say it's
Well, I think I've
necessary
proven.
to say.
I think I've proven. I think I've proven my point on this part. I think I've proven my point insofar as the
What was it?
incompatibility between your agreements currently and some other set of agreements.
Super quickly. Maybe I'm not tracking, or maybe I just feel like I don't want to say evaded because
I
that
mean,
sounds bad faith,
yeah, we can
but
continue this
questioned.
conversation later on.
Hmm. Super
Because I'm going
quickly,
to go
could you
pray
tell me?
anyways. I'm going to go pray.
Okay, for
What's up?
sure. But what was the incompatibility again? Because I'm like, I've been scribbling down a couple of things and I haven't been able to identify any sort of incompatibility. I feel like I resolved the preference thing pretty well. There's no problem there. What
Oh,
was
the
the
incompatibility I was
incompatibility?
mentioning was simply the idea of something being true by definition, which necessitates epistemic necessity, and then you agreeing that this thing which is a negation towards the entailment of your definition means something which is epistemically possibly false. So
There
that
we
would be
go.
the
Okay, that's why I said the language would be better communicated if we use semantically. If I had a different
okay.
idea, if you want to say like semantically necessary, yeah, of course. Like, yeah, that's like I don't want to keep using the word, but that's
Yeah,
trivially
but
true, right?
semantics is confined to sort of domain of knowledge, so the point still works in my favor anyway. So we define things
No,
in
I'm
virtue
just saying
for
I'm
conceptual
just saying I
knowledge
didn't have an
system.
understanding. I'm just saying I didn't have a complete
Okay,
understanding of the question without that language.
that's
Once I
fine.
do,
I
I
think
would say it
I
is
think the
necessary.
reductives have given anyways against the pro sentence position worked anyways, but I gotta go anyways to go pray, so we can talk like after prayer, okay?
Yeah, I'd love to. How long do you take to pray? Should I just chill, or
Like
you have been
15
late?
minutes or 10 minutes
Yeah.
or even less.
If you're gonna be around later, I'd be fine continuing discussing it. I'm gonna go pick up
Yeah,
some
that's
food
fine.
probably.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Good chatting with you again, man. Have a good one.